everybody. This is Brady Henderson, the senior pastor of the First Baptist Church in Gaston, South Carolina, and you are listening to the Menorah podcast, a podcast that seeks to share the light, speak the light, and send the light of Jesus Christ all across the airways of the internet. And it is episode 109, I believe, and we have a very special episode today. What is more than likely going to be a part one of two, if I can get enough information out of these two great folks that many of you know and love and appreciate. Terry and Sandra Pound are with me today, and last week on the Menorah podcast, Alan and I talked briefly about the church history update. We didn't really talk about the book as much as we wanted to because we wanted to wait till today because we have the author with us today, Dr. Sandra Pound. And last week we gave you an update that things are closer than they've ever been to the history book being published. And Terry and Sandra, I hope you guys are doing well today, and I want to thank you for being on with me today.
Yep, doing fine.
Good. Just as an icebreaker, you got to be proud of Britt Drawdy having a great senior season. You guys were able to make it the other night, and I was so happy because he hit a game-tying RBI double. You got to be proud of him.
Oh, yeah. I told him the other day that I asked him how busy he had been signing autographs.
Yeah.
He blushed a little bit.
A little bit. So do you know what his plans are as far as next year? Do you know?
He's planning to go to Tech and then see where he goes from there.
Okay.
But we've been there at the ball games. You just haven't seen us, but we've been up down the hill.
Parking on the hill.
That's right. You've been on the hill. That's right. That's right. If you can't make it tonight with the rain, we'll hopefully have the broadcast for you if they play. Got an update 30 minutes ago, said they're planning on it.
Good.
I'm so thankful for this rain. Speaking of the rain, I know you're a gardener and you guys have a beautiful yard. I don't know about y'all, but we need the rain.
Absolutely.
It's been tough. So thank you guys so much for coming on. And Sandra, I just want to say at the beginning of this, thank you so much for all of your hard work. And I know you're not going to brag on yourself, so I'm going to brag on you. And I think Terry will as well. You've been working on this probably longer than I realized. But when I shortly came here as pastor over 5 years ago now, it was probably 6 months after I came here, and you gave me a small excerpt of what you had so far, your notes, and I remember the email said, "Don't let this reading take away from your seminary studies." I think that I did read. I know I read it time and time again. So anyway, I'm super excited about your book. As I said last week on the podcast, you and I were talking off air about publishers, so we're still kind of working through some of that, but as far as the nice rough draft, you've got it. And we went through the table of contents very briefly last week. One thing that I mentioned on last week's episode is that I love your appendix. I love that because for historians such as the three of us, for those that are listening that don't really care about the history side, they just want the book, just indulge us for a second. The appendix is really important because that gives us the opportunity to dig deeper and gives us a lot of information. Kind of starting backwards, but you have worked so hard on this. Just speak a little bit to the appendix, and I know that there's not going to be near as much information in this book as the research you've done. Right? Can only be 300 pages or something, but there could be a lot more than that. But the appendix, I love what you've done with that.
Well, I'll add three things right here. I'll interject three things. In other words, it's not my book. It is the book of the church.
Yeah.
It is God's summation, I think, of a family, a church family, and their journey. And second, I will say that the appendix was Terry's idea.
Okay.
And thirdly, I will say that, yes, we had over 600 pages.
Wow.
And it was easy to get that 600 pages. The hard part was weeding through and deciding what should come out and what should stay in.
Well, that's difficult. I would feel that would be almost impossible. I have to do it on a weekly basis with sermons, but I couldn't imagine doing it on a history work, because that's people's lives, that's things that are remembered. On Appendix D, I really like this. Edgar Davis reminisces at 115th anniversary. I haven't read that yet, but I'm sure that's pretty awesome. And I'm glad he did that. I mean, he has done, we have to give him credit. I know he's in heaven now, but we have to give him credit because he is a big reason why we have a lot of what we have, correct?
Exactly. He had the opportunity to interview people that were, in 1939, some of the folks would have been 80 and 90 years old.
Yeah.
And he had the opportunity to interview those older folks, the Moors, the Seitlers, some of them. And they were able to tell him what their parents had told them. So, it's getting back to the 1850s when you hear that. And Edgar Davis was able to get some of that information that was, I don't know what we would do without that history that he wrote.
Well, it's very interesting because he also simultaneously pastored our sister church, Swansea First, and I believe he lived in their parsonage. Am I getting that right?
He did.
I think so, yeah.
So he was doing both. Now, did he do work with them in their history?
Not that I'm aware of, but we've got a copy of their history publication, and I'm sure he's in it.
Yeah, well, I'm sure. Yeah, I just didn't know if he did as much work, with them historical.
No,
we have no record of that.
Their history was done later.
Yeah.
Later,
Much
okay.
later.
Gotcha.
But it's just like with Miss Lucy May.
Yeah.
She was just a reservoir of information. And when you think, well, she's lived half the life of the church.
Yeah. She has. And her life was the church.
Yeah.
And you guys have had the privilege of obviously living right across the road here, always being involved in the church. But you guys in your lifetime have seen a time where everybody's life revolved around the church to nowadays where church is just, oh, well, I might go.
Yeah.
And you guys have been able to kind of see that full circle, which has got to be heartbreaking, but also rewarding at the same time.
I don't remember a time not going to church in my lifetime. And it's because my parents went and took us. And the same thing with Alan and a lot of the members that are current members today. They grew up in the church. This was the social life. It was the athletic. We had a church softball team, and so a lot of that took place. And our fellowships when Sandra and I were dating, fellowship hall, training union.
Yeah,
Our first date was here.
Yeah, it was the sweetheart banquet.
Wow, that's special. Yeah, I think about that a lot. When I think about you two and y'all's generation and just all the things that you guys have seen. I mean, just a myriad of things. Just really interesting. But I was thinking. Speaking of Alan, when you think of Edgar Davis, Alan's grandfather. Samuel Ott was a deacon while Edgar Davis was here. And another tidbit that I'm not going to expose everything in your book, Sandra, because we want people to read it. But you did an incredible job in chapter 7. I don't know how you did this. And I know you put a disclaimer and said that, we don't have all deacons, but you did a really good job. Every deacon I could think of, you have on here. And you also went an extra mile and put in who had served as chairmen. And so I think it's kind of interesting, Alan, that the only Ott that didn't serve as chairman was Samuel. You and your dad both served as chairman, but Sam didn't get that. But anyway, so this is a very extensive list, and we even have our newest, Matt Barfield, and I'm not sure which one is the oldest. I'm sure you could probably tell me, but it probably goes back to the charter deacons, I would assume. Are their names on here?
Yes.
Yeah, I would assume. So, I'm just looking at these, and, you did an incredible job.
Well, that was one of the things I had to reduce because at first I had every deacon and the year that they
were
ordained.
And it got confusing. And Terry said, well, what's a deacon? Always a deacon.
Correct.
So I depended so much on his input.
Correct. Yeah. Terry's always said that, and I always have agreed with that. I see one name on here, Archie Seitler. He was later ordained as a minister and is still living. Last I heard, he was driving a school bus. Is that right? I think he was.
Well, I don't know if he's retired. His wife's birthday, as a matter of fact, is today.
Oh, okay.
She's 70 today.
Wow.
That's hard to believe.
Archie Seitler or Archie Sharp?
Archie Sharp.
Archie Sharp is who I'm thinking of, not Archie Seitler. Okay.
There is an Archie Seitler, but it was Archie Daniel Seitler.
There were several Archie Seitlers.
Yeah.
Yes.
So Archie must have been a pretty popular name.
Yeah.
Okay. And then we got pictures of deacons, all kind of good stuff here. Well, let me ask you a few questions, Sandra. These are specific to you, and I sent these to you ahead of time. Most of the guests we have on here, as Alan can indicate, I don't give ahead of time, but I did with you, wanted to be as respectful as possible in that. This question has gone through my mind the last week. What was your strategy in getting all this information together? How do you do that?
Well, you'd have to know Terry because he is the historian. He has saved everything. If you've been in our library, you know that he has a notebook for every family, for everything that we've ever done. And so at first, I used Genesis, the wife, and God said, I will make you a helpmeet. And some translations say that the wife was the complement or the completer. And he keeps saying, we've got to do something with this history. We've got to do something. Well, it came to mind that I am his helper. I need to be helping him do this. And if I don't do it, it won't get done. But he is the one that has all this information, and he has it in his head.
Yeah.
And that was the sad thing, sad thought. If something happened to him, it would be gone.
And we lose all that.
I need to put this down, and we need to do something with it.
She's the writer.
Yeah, but you've got the
I'm
information.
the photographer.
And so God puts both of you together for such a time as this.
Right.
Because when my children and my children's children, when they think of, well, mom and dad or grandpa and grandma served at First Baptist Gaston, well, what is First Baptist Gaston? We can hand them, or whoever in the family can hand them a copy and say, here's the history.
Well, this might not be in what you wanted us to talk about today,
good.
But in looking at this whole history, I've been able to see how the gifts that God has given each person through the years and how they have contributed and used that gift, it has made the church work. You know, the way at times there have been some real bad times, bad actions on the people, but through it all, we can look today and see the gifts that God has given. All of them are important.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. And to go with Paul's metaphor, they all play a part in the body. And they all go along together so well. But before I ask you some other questions, and by the way, when we had our history committee meeting the other day, you know, Terry said, you know, y'all had boxes of papers in your bedroom. Are those still there?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, they're still there. That's wonderful.
When this history's finished, we'll have a new room to our house. We'll have an added room. We won't build again, but we'll just have a room we can use again.
And this may be a good time to say that I hope that the listeners, and especially the listeners from our church, will realize we need to preserve these artifacts, and they need a place that will be for their own home.
Yes, need a room. One thing that popped up in my mind, I've read, as you guys have, a lot of different church histories. One thing that sticks out about our church, in my mind, is that, and this isn't always true historically with Baptists, but throughout our history, we have I don't want to use the word allowed. Instead, you see throughout our history that women have stepped up and that women have been a really important part in our church history.
For sure.
And not always in church histories are they brought about, and especially in the 1880s, 90s, and early 1900s. I mean, when our church was founded, they couldn't even vote, right? And so, when our church was founded, only men who own land could vote. And so, obviously, our country's changed a lot, but throughout our history, and even today, but especially looking at it through history's eyes, women have been such an integral part of our church, and you brought that out wonderfully. There's tons of women that have been mentioned, but I kind of want to brag on the people who came before y'all. in allowing women to be able to have such an important role, because in Baptist life that has not always been the case, but it definitely has been here. And I think you could make a strong argument. I mean, I've made the argument with people today with our current church body, but even our church body in the past, you could argue if women stepped up, it wouldn't have got done.
I don't think we would have had a vacation Bible school if it had not been for the women of the church. But of course, we had vacation Bible school in the morning. The men were working.
Yep.
So when I talk about vacation Bible school, and I don't want to put down teachers, but I remember the ladies that cooked the cookies and made the refreshments for us. I can name all those.
Now, when did the vacation Bible school start here? Do you remember?
It was about that same time, and about mid
40s, wasn't it?
maybe a little bit before then.
Yeah.
We don't have really that much documentation on vacation Bible school.
But what I could find is in there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for sure.
Absolutely. So essentially, you were one of the first students in vacation Bible school,
Well,
possibly.
When I remember it, it was the Talberts had started.
Yeah.
Of course, that's right after I got baptized, and
Yeah.
Ms. Monroe.
Yeah.
The Monroes had vacation Bible school. So I'd say the late 40s,
Yeah.
it was going pretty strong.
Yeah, that'd be about right.
But training union actually started with his dad's era.
Yeah. Yeah.
They were young people were strong in the church then.
Yeah.
That would have been in the 30s.
Yep. I've seen the roll. We found it. I think you and I found. I can't remember. I found the Sunbeam roll with Theus.
Yeah.
1918, somewhere in there. And of course, you guys know, but the 1919 to all the way until World War II was a really tough time.
Yeah.
And anyway, so let me ask another question, and we'll definitely make this a two-parter. So if you're listening and you want to continue to listen, guess what? We'll have another one for you next week. So this one's for both of you. Of course, I know Terry is the compiler. I've been in the library. I love seeing the bulletins. Every time I go to y'all's house, I learn something new, which is fun, or get to see something. And every time we have a history meeting, Terry will get up from the chair, go in the library, and come back with something brand new. And anyway, so what were some sources that you found helpful? Because in the parts that I've read so far, you can't go a paragraph without a source being cited, which is great because you've used tons of sources. But what sources did you find the most helpful?
Well, when that cold winter day, when we looked in that box and pulled out those first minutes, the first church minutes, and started going through those minutes, it was like lights were just flashing everywhere. It was like going into that actual first church, and or one of those first churches, and seeing those people. That was very, very exciting.
Well, I think one of the things, in addition to that, is Kathy Stabler went to, I don't know exactly what, probably South Carolina Library, and got copies of the Lexington Dispatch from the early 1900s. And there was a guy that was a member of our church, William Fallaw.
William Boyd Fallaw.
William Boyd Fallaw.
He was called
Billy Felix was his pen name, yeah, Billy Felix.
He was a pastor, right?
He was a pastor.
Yeah.
He pastored Harmony.
That's right.
Yep.
But he was still a member of our church when he did that.
But Kathy transcribed every issue of the Lexington Dispatch because it had a little column called the Gaston News.
Yeah.
And it would have every activity of the church that took place, because that was that was one of the main centers of news and everything else in the church. And Kathy did a great job on that. And I've got a copy of what she did, and we use that extensively. It would tell about the peanut boilings and fish fries and, youth meetings and stuff like that.
Another thing that was enlightening that I called you about a time or two, I think, was when I found out that through, I won't tell the source, but everybody knows what source it is, that you can trace your ancestry back. When I could actually see that so-and-so sitting in that pew, his daddy was, and his granddaddy was, and his great-granddaddy ready was, and there they were, a charter member of this church. That would just excite me to no end.
Yes, yes. And we have several people who are still very active today whose
Direct descendants.
direct descendants and
Charter members.
So that is awesome.
And I would call people and tell them, or send them an email and show them, and a lot of times they had no clue. They had no idea.
Yep, no idea where they came from. Yeah, that's so important. Well, let me ask you this, and then I'll save some of the rest of my content for our episode next week. How did you, and each of you can answer this, how did you fall in love with history?
Well, I'll talk first and then give him the longest time to talk. But my daddy was, he was the oldest one in his family, and he told stories all the time. I would take, when we would go home after we got married, when we'd go home, I'd take my little tape recorder, and I would tape him. And sometimes he would talk for an hour, and then he would say, I don't want to talk about it anymore. But he remembered getting the bricks from England to start the church there.
Wow.
And he would tell...
Britain's Neck, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
And those stories were so special to me.
Absolutely. That's awesome. Terry?
Well, you know, just stories, family stories, hearing about, you know, Mr. Cully's store, and who owned it before Mr. Cully owned it. And, you know, growing up right in the middle of Gaston, you hear, you know, I could take you on a tour of Gaston right now, just in my mind of what things were like growing up. I remember when the BP station on the corner, which is now the Sunoco station, was not there. And we used to walk behind it. There was a little dirt road behind it where we'd always come from school. And there was a fence built right beside it with, you know, cross ties and wire. I could visualize all that stuff now.
Wow.
And just hearing the town people talk about things, because, you know, I say it jokingly, but you're related to everybody. When you're growing up in Gaston, you were related to everybody. Everybody, you call them aunt or uncle, or, you know, there was some kind of family connection that, you know, I know Aunt Gladys Smith. She told me, she said, you don't know how many times I spanked your behind. And she did, because, you know, back then, that's what would happen.
Absolutely.
You misbehave in somebody's yard, they'd take care of it.
That's right. That's right. Well, what's, you know, what's, having grown up in Gaston and, of course, living most of y'all's lives here, how much different is it today? Is it different, or is it still the same?
It's very different. I can go in the grocery store, either Food Line or IGA, I can be in there an hour and not know the first person.
Wow.
It's just that many new people have moved in, and it's growing rapidly. But they're good people that have moved in.
Yep.
And I tell people, you're born in the garden spot of the world. Why move? Why leave?
That's right.
I love Gaston.
Well, and I do too. I do too. And of course, when we moved, you know, when I moved here and everything, it just so happened that we could only find a house in Lexington, yada yada yada. But I love this area. I love the Midlands. Having grown up in the Upstate, no offense to the Upstate, it's fine, but I just love the Midlands. I enjoy it, and I probably enjoy it a little more than Hannah. She's an Appalachian girl. But anyway, so we're going to wrap up this week. We don't want this episode to be too long, but y'all don't go anywhere. We're going to keep you guys here, and so we'll be back next week with episode 110 as we continue to talk about the church history with our church historians, Terry and Sandra Pound. Thank you for tuning in to episode 109 of the Menorah podcast, a podcast that seeks to share the light, speak the light, and send the light of Jesus Christ all across the airwaves of the internet. We'll see you next week.